So really excited to be here in this kind of inaugural event in Europe here, for ARM. I will be speaking to some forward-looking statements, so please refer to our SEC filings for the risks associated with the company. I'm going to start with a comment about ARM. And one of the things I love about ARM in particular is I was having a drink, two or three, with a CEO of a company that arguably is a competitor of ours last night. And the conversation went to patients, all about the impact that this field has the potential to have on such a broad set of patients across the globe. And it went to how we need to get those stories out on a more regular basis so that the world can really understand what this field is all about and the potential of the field. That is the great thing about ARM, bringing people together that in a separate environment might not engage, but here it's all about the family that we formed here in this industry in trying to recode the system. And that is something that Bluebird itself is very, very focused on, which is really changing the system, leveraging those patient impact stories and the real-life examples of the impact that we and others are having on the field, and the ability to not only change the system scientifically in addressing those challenges, but from a regulatory and development standpoint, we've got great collaboration now with the agencies across the globe. And now we're faced with a new challenge, is how to get these products to many more patients across the globe on the commercial side. Market access challenge, the pricing and reimbursement challenges. And I'll talk about some of those, at least from Bluebird's perspective. But one of the things that we changed a little bit about how we are conveying what Bluebird is all about is seen here on this slide, and that's recoding for life. And recoding for life, you can see some of the things that are near and dear to our heart, care and radical care, making it personal on a daily basis, and then truly continuing to be pioneers in the field. I think arguably one of the early players in the field, but it's hard when you get large being 800 people company, to continue to be innovative across the board. There's this concept of regressing to the mean, which we're fighting against as an organization. And it does get to the patient stories, and I'm going to share one that we were talking about last night, some of which recently became a part of some non-Bluebird media attention, but it's in sickle cell disease. And I'll tell a very quick story about a principal investigator that came into Bluebird, as they do on a periodic basis, to educate us on either what's happening in their clinical trial or the patient experiences or the family experiences. In this case, it was a description of, do you really understand what it's like to be a sickle cell patient? And none of us really can, to be fair. But she tried, and she gave one example. She asked a question and said, how many of you have had Percocet because of an injury? Coming out of a surgery, and half the audience raised their hand, and me included. And how many Percocets did you take for the pain that you were in coming out of a major surgery? 1, 2. How did you feel? Everybody kind of conveyed their feelings of, yeah, you're pretty knocked out. You're feeling a lot better than you would otherwise, that's for sure. And then the question came, how many equivalent Percocets does a sickle cell patient need when they're in crisis, in a hospital, coming in? And the answer was 10. And that really brings it home to at least it did to me, and I think a lot of people in the room, that patient requires or needs 10, and many of them become refractory to some of these drugs as well and need other medications that are equally as powerful, if not more powerful. These are the types of conditions that we all are treating, and Bluebird certainly is attempting to treat as well. And we have to constantly remember that that's why recoding the system is not only required, but we have an opportunity as a company and as a field to do that now, because these patients start with such a dire situation, and the transformative effects that we're seeing in some of these trials, including Bluebird's, is remarkable. Now we have to continue that work, and we have to continue across the entire spectrum of developing a therapy, including giving patients access to them. So this is Bluebird as of the beginning of the year. At JP Morgan, we announced an even bolder vision for the company. And that's 4 products potentially on the market by 2022. You can see the 4 programs here. The LentiGlobin program with potential EU approval this year, and then filing this year as well in the US with a potential 2020 approval. Same for 2121 in our partnership with Celgene, a potential 2020 approval for our multiple myeloma program, a CAR T program. Then in 2021, our CALD program, targeting a very rare CNS disease in young boys that is lethal. And then following that is the hope that we can get our sickle cell program filed and approved by 2022 as well. But behind that is something that we haven't really talked about extensively, and that's a pipeline that is emerging, which really feeds this 5+ clinical programs by that point in time, in addition to the 4 you see up here, plus an engine that we have been building for a number of years with the hopes that that will generate 1 to 2 INDs per year. So this is who we aspire to be, and we have at least a line of sight relative to what is going on in the company right now. Our anchor program is in thalassemia. We received a positive CHMP opinion recently and are hopeful for an approval in Europe here shortly. The data are compelling, and I'm not going to go through any data slides here today, so certainly you should refer to any of the prior presentations of the company in the past to see the transformative effects, at least in the clinical trials we've shown to date across all the programs. But this is a program that's heading toward commercialization, and that's where the company is anchored. I'll come back to that in a second, and first in Europe. But you can see the ongoing trials for 2 different genotypes, a non-beta 0 genotype and a beta 0 genotype, North Star 2 and 3 respectively, and then obviously a long-term follow-up trial. Sickle cell program is one that we continue to be very excited about based on the data that we've shown to date in terms of the transformative effects. This has been a long road getting to this point. As many of you know, the history of bluebird having a very exciting first patient, patient 1204, from a prior trial that looked quite remarkable in terms of the outcomes. And then we stumbled quite a bit and really had to really determine what the next steps were. We spent 2 years really trying to figure out what happened with the subsequent 6 patients where they didn't have the same outcomes as that first patient, and now we presented data on all of the changes we've made to the manufacturing process and the clinical protocol that we think now has got us back on the road to delivering transformative effects for those patients. And as such, we've expanded our 206 trial and had some great interactions with the regulatory authorities on how to think about a registration path, and that is here. We've updated the 206 trial itself to add 21 patients with the endpoints you see here, and plan to start the pivotal trial this year. We've created some flexibility there in terms of the endpoints, both primary and secondary, such that if the data warrant it, we may have an opportunity to have discussions with the agencies over time based on data on hand. And therefore the exact timing of regulatory submission is still up in the air, but we hope 2022 is at least a time frame that we can meet. And then our program in multiple myeloma with Celgene, we're also very excited about this. You've seen some of the data from the not from KarMMa, the pivotal trial, but from the earlier trials that again were quite compelling relative to standard of care. And because of that, we are advancing across with Celgene a number of clinical trials, not only in the relapse refractory population, which is where we have the data that I just referenced, but also KarMMa-3, KarMMa-2 ongoing or up and running now in 3rd and 2nd line respectively, and then plans to start a 1st line trial this year as well. So again, the data are driving our desire to expand that rapidly, and certainly Celgene and we continue to push very hard to get this product over the end line, at least initially in the relapse refractory population. And then we've got our CLD program, which actually was the genesis of bluebird, in the original investment in bluebird back in 2009. One that's near and dear to the company because these boys unfortunately have an often fatal neurologic disease with only one really therapy that has shown promise, and that's allo, but that comes with its own set of risks and challenges, both morbidity and mortality challenges. And so we've shown data in our Starbeam trial, which is intended to be the pivotal trial for that program as well. And we're on track right now for filing in or approval hopefully in 2021, as I referenced. And these are the faces that you see. Many of them we know and have experience. This is Ethan, who we know their family quite well, and unfortunately Ethan did not survive his disease, and that's why we continue to push hard to make sure there's no more Ethans of the world. It's a big challenge, but one that we're taking on. So very quickly, all of this creates an opportunity for the company over the next 5 years to have launch after launch after launch. And that's a daunting thing to say for a company of our size, especially starting in Europe and then moving to the US across all of these programs. But you can see the potential progression of launches. And it's not just launches of products. It's country by country, it's indication by indication, it's population by population. That's the really exciting opportunity for us, and it's going to be a progressive build. The challenge for us, and I'll come to this in a second, is to make sure we get it right out the gates. And so that's our focus in 19 and 20. Make sure we set up the system, recode the system to get it right for not only our therapies that are to follow, as you can see, but for others as well. But I'm going to touch very briefly on this product engine that we believe that we have developed. You can see the pipeline here. I referenced the left side of this chart already. It's the right side that we are getting more and more excited about in terms of the prospect of having a pipeline behind the core 4 programs that I just referenced. And it's been based on many years of both internal research and building capabilities, acquiring and/or gaining access to tools and technologies that didn't come from Bluebird, and then partnering with some great institutions to make sure that we've got all of the kind of best-in-class tools and capabilities to attack solid tumors, for example. And we have an RNC Day, an Analyst Day, coming up May 9th, where we're going to discuss this in some length, really for the first time in a number of years, what the pipeline looks like coming forward. I'm not going to talk about this today. I'm going to spend the last few minutes here talking about gearing up for launch. It's across making sure that we've got the manufacturing set up, including the supply chain, setting up not just our clinical trial data, but also real-world evidence support, and then also making sure that we do it in a way that we think makes sense, not leveraging existing models, but creating a blue-style model for a gene therapy product that is high touch with the institutions and the patients and their families as much as you can, and you have to be careful in different regions, obviously on the patient side of things, including in Europe, but doing it in a way that really makes sure that we're wrapping all we can around those patients and their communities to make this a successful outcome for them. And outcome not just meaning clinical outcome, but also the experience. Here's the number of stakeholders that really play in this, and we've been learning over the last 2 years as we've engaged the community across all of these different stakeholders. And our intent is to set up systems, and you can see the qualified treatment centers that we have planned to get up and running in 2019, including our drug product manufacturing across Germany, Italy, UK, and eventually France. And to do it in a way that I just described, which is true Bluebird, patient experience being optimized, and getting the model right for the long term. And it's really because we have so many products coming and launches coming that really 19 and 20 is a year or years to set up getting the system right, getting the model right, making sure the patient experience is right. And one of them is around access. Historically, as you see on the left-hand side, the system has not been really set up for a one-time gene therapy for transformative lifelong potential benefit. And so our will is to change the system in a way that affords the opportunity for the company and all of the stakeholders to have a successful endeavor here. And you can see some of the things that we focus on the right-hand side. And this is something we came out at JP Morgan describing, which is our payment model. Historically, on the top, you see in a classic rare disease model, in a chronic model, they're paying $300,000 to $600,000 a year for those therapies, which can cost tens of millions of dollars for certain patients. I would be willing to bet that it's very difficult to create a value proposition that says these therapies are worth What's the one on the far right? $29 million. But yet the system pays for it in that way. Obviously not every patient $29 million. I'm exaggerating on the extreme. We thought what makes sense is down at the bottom, which is over 5 years with 80% at risk. So the first payment is not at risk. The final 4 are at risk. And that's the model that we plan to implement in the marketplace. Here are some of the catalysts for the year. Very excited about the year ahead, both mid-year and end of year. You can see these, and these are also on our website. But it really is all about the people back in, well, I shouldn't say just back in Cambridge, in Seattle, in North Carolina, and now throughout Europe. We've got 70 people in Europe, 800 plus people in the company right now. So we're gearing up for launch, and it's going to be a fun year ahead. So thank you very much.